All right, guys, we are live. The camera's over here, not there. Sorry. We are live. Welcome to another Sunday night podcast. I'm Kevin Shaw, editor-in-chief of the Watercraft Journal. We're in my home office tonight, and I want to welcome everyone. We're going to have a little bit of fun. It's been a while since I brought out the dry erase board, so I prepared a lesson with some fun technical stuff that we're going to go over. Share a little bit of inside baseball and just ins and outs of the watercraft industry, and when it comes to developing personal watercraft and getting the most performance out of your personal watercraft. Obviously, for you guys who are been around, have been watching the live podcasts, we spend typically about 45 minutes talking about the topic at hand. And then I'll go even an hour, if not longer, in answering your questions. Anyone who is, excuse me, anyone who wants to support us and provide us a super chat donation of $5 or more, we will take your questions ahead of time. I'll actually stop what I'm talking about and answer your questions immediately. Want to give a little bit of preferential treatment to the people who want to support us. So definitely want to thank all of you guys who have come in, purchased t-shirts, purchased hoodies, stickers. Speaking of which, you got a big stack of them for our super chats. And we got a lot of people who are coming in. So I'm kind of just doing the little intro and welcome. A little bit of news that's coming up for the Watercraft Journal is we are just about to publish the article on proper Sea-Doo break-in procedures. It's more aimed at Sea-Doo. Sea-Doo has the more laborious break-in procedure versus Yamaha or Cowie. Yamaha requires an hour and a half, typically 2 hours, but about an hour and a half is what they recommend for a break-in procedure. Kawasaki's an hour, because both of those brands, those engines are not only bench tested, but they are what you would call a table break-in. It's on an engine stand. They run fuel and water through it, and they proceed to run through that engine. Rotax doesn't necessarily do that, and so that's why they require a lot of people, or actually all people, I should say, to properly break in their engine. And it is a 10-hour process. There's a 5-hour minimum, and at 2.5 hours, some of the throttle restrictions let up. But at 5 hours, that watercraft is almost completely untethered. That is, of course, unless you've gone in and you void your warranty and you reflash the ECU and all that kind of fun stuff. But anyways, so that video is coming out. Should be Tuesday of this week. And then we are working on 2 other videos that are coming up pretty quickly. And that is, interestingly enough, and anyone who follows us on Instagram would have seen this, was that Sea-Doos, particularly Yamaha, Kawasaki not so much, but Yamaha and Yamaha to a lesser extent, but Sea-Doo primarily has a bit of a problem with. I love how now you do a video on break-in, and I'm sitting at rolling in 15 hours. Yeah, I know. Well, welcome. There's still a lot of people who are going to need this, and video content will last a long time. But thank you, Anthony. Let's turn my light on, for goodness sakes. Holy cow. Sorry, guys. So one of the things that we wanted, or another video that we're talking about, is Sea-Doo uses a lot of decorative plastics. These are unpainted surfaces, and even if they're colored in the plastic. They're not actually painted. Yamaha and Kawasaki, to another degree, uses a lot of painted parts, but Sea-Doo is molding everything into it. Unfortunately, a lot of the actual bond of those plastics are pretty soft, and that makes them prone to scratching and hazing. Actually, in large part of what I was saying about towing your watercraft with your cover on is that those plastics are very prone to getting hazing and small scratches. And personally, I've fought with these plastics for probably 4 to 5 years. Really nice high gloss plastics by the end of the first season look hazy, look dull. And I've used a lot of different materials, and people who are kind of religious zealots will just be like, XPS, just XPS. And I'm like, well, XPS doesn't make the right kind of product to bring back that luster. You're putting a coat on, but you're not actually restoring the plastic. We did videos on using heat guns on faded Polytech raw plastics, but I'm not talking about raw plastics here. I'm talking about high polish or high polish, high gloss plastics. And just this last week, after spending probably 3 or 4 days, we figured out a pretty good 4-step process for getting, especially the high gloss black plastics and for the high vibrant colored plastics back to a factory shine. And in fact, we had ordered a replacement, and I was focusing primarily, my efforts were focused primarily on the high gloss plastic that's on the top of the mirrors, on the side mirrors. And because those seem to get a brunt of a lot of the wear and damage, whether it's by splashing gas, pulling stuff out of storage, and you scratch you're scratching the plastic because you're pulling a duffel bag or a backpack, or even your jet ski cover out of the front storage bin. Those typically get a lot of the damage. And I had gone to Riva and I had ordered a replacement. And then because of the delays, I kind of figured, well, I'll put some elbow grease in and I'll start working on that black plastic. And I went through probably 7 different combinations using different polishes, different compounds, using a DA polisher, going by hand, different microfibers, different polishing wheels. And I found a very easy, very low dollar way to make those plastic panels look really, really good. And in fact, earlier this week, the replacement piece from Riva showed up, and I pulled the replacement piece out, and I realized that my finish that I got on the mirror is actually better than what came from factory, because that piece doesn't come from Riva; it comes straight from the factory. And I'm looking at it, and I took an LED light, and I'm looking at all the compound curves, and I realized, I'm like, I have less spiral scratches in my repaired piece than what comes from factory. So literally that video is being produced, and we're going to have that out in probably a week and a half to 2 weeks. That's going to be a big deal, especially for the Sea-Doo guys. And it's pretty low buck. I mean, like, you can go out and get some really bitchin' stuff and really spend some good money, but I'm seriously doing low buck on this one, and it's super replicable. So I'm gonna share that process with everyone in the video, and we'll go over the video in a couple weeks once it goes live. There will be an article attached to the video. Again, there will be an article attached to the video, and there's more details in the article than what I can cram in a video. Video is just kind of pretty and it's entertaining, and it'll have the basic tutorial in it, but I will put more information and all the hyperlinks to the products I use in that article. So make sure you're clicking the link in the description so that you're getting both the video and the article. Okay, well, let's go over. I'm not late. Absolutely not. I started exactly at 8 p.m. So I don't know what you're talking about. I started exactly at 8 p.m. I was very stringent about that. So let's talk about stuff that's been on the engineering table that has patents, that hasn't been used, won't be used, or stuff that will be used in the future. This is kind of an ambiguous one, but there's a lot of really neat stuff that just, I kind of like the behind the scenes stuff. Like when I get like a DVD box set, I'm always watching the making of. And what is very interesting to me is the engineering that goes into personal watercraft, what gets used, what gets put aside, and predominantly the reason why a lot of technology is put on the back burner is cost, is quite frankly just because it's super expensive. And one of the neat things that I'm looking on, and this goes into a topic a lot of people have asked about me doing a video regarding prop pitch and how to properly pitch a prop and what goes, how do you come up with these degrees and leading edge degrees and trailing edge and all the different kind of stuff. And that brought me more into understanding first impeller, second of all, pump design. And pump design is very, very intriguing to me because as it stands, it's a little inefficient. And by little, I mean a lot. There's a lot of inefficiencies when it comes to personal watercraft. So I've dedicated a lot of videos to engine performance. And today is not going to be about engine performance, because we live in a day and age where you can have 350 horsepower in a blink of an eye. Okay, you can contact Riva or JP Racing's or Dean's team or Broward Motorsports, and you can have yourself an 82, 83, 84 mile an hour Sea-Doo or Yamaha like that. So I really don't want to dedicate a lot of this to engine tech, because there is some engine tech that's still on the table, and we can do that at a later time. What I think is really intriguing and what has never been covered by me previously and by anyone else on the internet, at least when it comes to four strokes, is pump efficiency and hull efficiency. And we're going to talk a little bit about a lot of information or a lot of technical innovation that went into pumps that is in limbo, as well as current arguments and current efforts that are going into hull materials and hull surfaces. That sounds a little weird, but I promise for you tech guys who love to go into the weeds like I do, this should be entertaining, at least, or if not informative. Okay, so I got the dry erase board out. I spent a little bit preparing a lesson. So here is the project, what I call the project board out of my garage. Let's make sure that we're, and good. That should hold it. All right, let's move the mic out of the way. All right. What is that variable nozzle on the whiteboard? Evan's skipping ahead. Okay, guys, let's talk about, we're going to spend a little bit of time first on your jet pump. All right. And jet pumps, you're going to see a lot of lines, a whole lot going on here. So I'm going to try to walk us through this whole thing. Okay. The biggest concern regarding a jet pump is volume and velocity. All right. And a lot of this technology, believe it or not, and this is, the more questions I asked to the right people, the more intriguing it got, was a lot of this technology, believe it or not, is 20 or even up to 30 years old. And it was primarily poured into two strokes. And well, it was all two strokes 30 years ago, but it was poured into small runabouts, because the small runabouts were seeing the greatest gains in advances in technology when it came to the pump design. And so a lot of guys were seeing a lot of gains without touching the engine. And a lot of the stuff hasn't gone away. A lot of this stuff hasn't failed, all right? But it's easier and more cost-effective for the OEs to put money into a supercharger, money into bigger displacement. And so they looked at it as, well, we'll push the engine stuff first. And that's where it's ended up being. Now, let's talk about the basics of your jet pump, okay? I'm going to lay this all out first, so hang with me, all right? Here's your prop shaft or your impeller shaft, your drive shaft going directly to the coupler on the outside of your engine. Runs into, and this is your shaft, runs into the impeller, all right? From the impeller, it attaches to the stator. From the stator, your water flow is going like this through the stator, past the pump cone, into the venturi, and there is, in many cases, in a venturi, it's not a smooth bore. There are some fins that continue the stator fins, and you see these little dotted lines here. These dotted lines represent the inside of the stator that you'll see like an 8 vein or a 12 vein or an 18 vein, depending on the brand or what the application is. And that water flows through the stator, past the pump cone, past the venturi, and out the steering nozzle. Okay? Now, that's very, very basic. Now, interestingly enough, you're looking at negative pressure. This is water pressure that is being pulled in. All right? The impeller is pulling water in at this point. But once we pass the tail or the trailing edge of the impeller blade, it's now positive pressure. It's now pushing, all right? And that pushing velocity, that water velocity, is what's registered as thrust. Interestingly enough, for whatever reason, Yamaha and Sea-Doo do not publicly list their thrust number. Cowie is the only one who advertises their thrust, and that's at 1,890 pound-feet. So, or pounds, I should say, not pound-feet. That's torque, but pound. So there's 1,890 pounds of thrust being blown out of the back of that steering nozzle. That's probably why they're telling people, watch your orifices on the back of your jet ski. So anyhow, interestingly enough, there's a couple other things that are happening hydrodynamically here in your pump. So as your impeller is spinning, okay, it's agitating the water as it pulls it in, and that rifling motion, okay, that turbine motion, if there was no stator here and there was no blades in the stator, no blades in the venturi, what would happen is that the water would continue rifling, continue spiraling through the pump and exit the steering nozzle, twisting. Well, what does that do? Right? Well, if left unchecked, that water and that motion will literally cause your watercraft to pull. Okay? And it would favor a side. It would actually, it wouldn't necessarily roll over, but interestingly, a lot of people complain that the Kawasaki, that the Ultras have a low speed left leaning at low speeds, and that it likes to hang on the left. Well, what happens? Oh, interesting. Okay, sorry, I'm seeing comments down here. And I'm going to get into how to repair or how to fix or how Cowie should fix it. But the reason the stator exists and it has these blades is that these blades literally they go opposite of the spiral rotation of the water. And what it's trying to do is the stator is trying to satiate or trying to even out the water so that it's now, instead of being rifled out like this, it's actually slowed so that the water is going straight out. Okay. Now the stator is, the little fins that are in the stator are pitched. Not a lot, but they're pitched. And so are a good custom Venturi. By the time that the stator evens out, the blades in the Venturi are perpendicular. They're pretty straight. So by the time the water is leaving the Venturi nozzle, it should be going straight out. Okay, there shouldn't be any rifling that's happening. Okay, interestingly enough, there's a lot happening here, a lot of dynamic force, hydrodynamic forces that can be improved. All right, and one of them, and I'm going to just go from left to right. It's not in chronological order, but a lot of people are concerned with pitching a prop. All right. Well, what do I do in modifying the pitch of my prop? Well, again, there goes the stupid Bluetooth mouse. Is that in this case, a lot of people have been toying with, and they've been toying with this since World War II, is variable pitch impellers. And variable pitch impellers or variable pitch props, what they're intended to do, all right, and this is the theoretical side, is that if the pitch of an impeller can be adjusted on the fly, you can basically adjust or you can counter the engine RPM. And so if you have an engine that only wants to spin 5,000 RPM, having the ability to adjust the pitch of the impeller, suddenly you can have a pitch that's incredibly aggressive on the low end, so that you're grabbing a lot of water and you're pulling out of the hole really fast. And then as the RPMs rise up and before it starts to lay over, when I say lay over, it means that the engine's running out of power. Let's say it stops at 5,000 RPM. It just lays over. It's got no more power after 5,000 RPM. Well, by 3,500 RPM, the pitch will even out and smooth out, and that will be able to process water as efficiently without the engine wringing itself out. So a lot of manufacturers, and this is predominantly in the large yacht and in large barges and container ships and other large vessels, there does exist jet drive impellers that are switch pitch impellers. I know IntelliJet is the biggest name when it comes to that. Like they're doing giant commercial barges, and they have a switch pitch impeller. But there isn't anything small enough and lightweight enough for a jet ski. And that's the biggest thing is that it's a big, heavy impeller. And that's a lot of mass working around and spinning at a high RPM. And for a small vessel, it'd tear itself apart, especially with a fiberglass hull. So right now, a mechanically adjusted switch pitch or adjustable pitch impeller is a little bit out of the question. Interestingly enough, there were a couple guys who were messing with Delrin and rubber, high density rubber pitches, that pitched impellers, and that these impellers were quite literally made out of a Delrin plastic with basically rubber blades. And the idea was that at low end or at low RPMs, the leading edge of the impeller was real aggressive. And as RPM started spinning and spinning fast, the actual centrifugal force would pull on that rubber, and the pitch would actually even out and smooth out, and those impellers would actually self-adjust. There's a lot of really neat tech involved. The impellers that you'll see that are currently in use, they have an outer ring, believe it or not. And that outer ring is just so that they don't expand too far, because what will happen is that they'll expand and expand and expand till they hit the outside, the outside, the inner diameter of the jet pump, and they'll lock up. or they'll cause friction and they'll catch and then they'll stall up and tear themselves to pieces. But there's a lot of really neat innovation happening when it comes to a switch pitch or self-adjusting rubber impeller. The other thing with a rubber impeller, and I know that Sea-Doo was messing with it because they even mentioned it, was they were really struggling with the notion of people getting crap caught up in the jet pump. And they're like, how do we mitigate that? How do we fix that? IDF was one of them. IDF was an attempt to try to keep garbage from clogging up the jet pump. Now, because of the specificity of the Fish Pro application, they said, well, that'd be really good for people fishing in shallow areas where there's lots of grass and lots of weeds, and we'll put the effort there. Now, obviously, there's means to an end when it comes to IDF. They're looking at developing a transmission, but and that's 5 years, 10 years down the line. I mean, literally a high and low gear transmission. And interestingly enough, the biggest question is, well, listen, if there's a high gear and a low gear, the prop isn't going to be as efficient unless they go with a self-adjusting impeller. Does that make sense? I just gave you a strong hint for the future, guys. All right. Once we start seeing a high and low gear transmission, pay attention to what the impellers start to look like. All right. Stator technology. Stator technology is interesting, and this is where I was leading to with the Kawasaki thing. Kawasaki's have this left side lean. All right. Well, the engine is spinning at such an RPM, and the stator is not doing a sufficient job in satiating and unraveling or uncoiling that thrust dynamic. So a lot of guys who are building top-end race ultras, they don't have that problem. Well, why don't they have that problem? Because they got badass stators. All right. And why is my phone on? Good gravy. Let me turn that just completely off. I had it on silent and it went off anyway, and it trips up my Mac because everything's linked together. Sorry. So a lot of Cowie guys who have built their pumps, they'll have a really badass, 160, 161, 162 stator. And typically Scat Track has made the best when it comes to really trick billet stators. There's a few other guys who are making some. I know there's a lot of guys out of Thailand who are making some trick stuff too. But there isn't a lot that I've seen besides completely redesigning and billet machining, CNC machining a billet stator. And that's such an expensive piece, and it's such a unique thing that a lot of folks, quite frankly, that's not something that most folks would change. Now, here's where it gets fun. All right. I actually really am having a lot of fun investigating more about this. Okay. Venturi nozzles. We can almost completely ignore steering nozzles for the most part, because by the time your power is really here, is exiting the Venturi. All right. Your steering nozzle is just directing the thrust. You're not going to pick up any more speed. You're not going to pick up any more velocity. The jury's out, but your steering nozzle, there's so much slop in it because it's, for you guys who are seeing a nozzle over it's basically the Venturi nozzle and then the steering nozzle over it. There's a big ring of slop around that. So you're not really going to pick up any added velocity here. Now, in the Venturi, all right, in this Venturi cone or Venturi nozzle that we're seeing here, this is where a lot of the energy is lost. All right, a lot of your thrust is lost here. And this is primarily remember, for a lot of you guys who remember the overstuffing issue that was occurring with the FZ Yamahas. What was happening here is you had a really big pump inlet. All right, the pump inlet was huge, and at speed, the impeller was struggling to process all that water coming in. All right, it was struggling. Basically, the velocity of incoming water was overpowering the impeller's ability to draw in water. Okay, so that was overstuffing the prop, or overstuffing the pump. And I am trying to correct myself from saying prop. I apologize. But the big issue that a lot of guys were finding out was happening here in the Venturi. Okay, because what happens is that all your water is coming in. Okay, and depending on the volume, how much space you have in the Venturi, and how quickly the Venturi can push that out, that is basically what your hangup is. All right. Now, why have a pump cone? Why have that? So a pump cone is what's helping to align and decavitate. That's not a word. I'm making that up. But decavitate the water. All right. It's to actually still the water. Now, interestingly enough, let's talk about freestyle and free ride stand-up jet skis just for a second. Believe it or not, in here, because a freestyle stand-up jet ski wants to do something interesting, and that is they're all about low-end torque. They're all about initial thrust, boom, boom. Peter, I'm getting to it. They're all about launch. Rip on the throttle and get sky high. That's the whole idea. All right. So I need as much thrust and I need to push as much volume out as possible to get me out of the water. So what they have is that their pump cone is super duper small. All right. It's very, very shallow. And the intention for that is to fill up the Venturi with as much volume as possible. So when the throttle's goosed, it's pushing that out. Now, with top-end racers, for guys who are going super fast, they don't want all that. What they want is velocity. They want the speed of water. Let's use a red line. They want the velocity. Now, here's where the water flow typically goes. It goes up here. All right. They want that flow to be as fast as possible. Okay. So that is the goal of a high velocity pump. The problem is that you're also slow. You're not going full throttle the whole time unless you're a drag racer. Okay. But a guy who's close course, who's on the throttle, off the throttle, going around a buoy, launching off of the starting line, you slow down to get to the buoy, you get on the throttle, you stop, chop, and roll, where you chop, drop, and roll. Excuse me. So you chop the throttle, you drop, and you roll into the throttle, and you grab the throttle as you're pulling around the corner. So you want velocity, but you also want that thrust. So that's the really hard thing, is finding that sweet spot. All right. Believe it or not, there's some technologies out there that allow for an adjustable pump cone. Now, Jerry Gaddis, a few years ago, came up with the Lucky 13 pump cone. And if you look at the pump cone, it's razor sharp. It comes to it looks like a missile nose, the nose of a missile. All right, so long, very elongated pump cone. Additionally, he adds spacers that can actually get the pump cone to favor either be center, up, really up, and that's because the velocity of the water is typically running on the top. So if he's favoring the high end or the low end, you're adjusting your thrust attitude. Fair enough. Well, his is adjustable. You have to go in manually, pull out the cone, put your spacers in, put it back in. You're monkeying with it constantly. All right. That's drag racer. That's a really good drag racer appendage. That's a really good accessory for a drag racer. Here's the problem. That's not really user-friendly. And one of the most interesting things is about, let's see, 2001. So about 1994. Yeah, so back in 1994, the guys at Wet Wolf, and I think he's in Seattle or he's in Washington State. Wet Wolf, he was a stand-up rider, and then he had a big Polaris, and he had a did he have a Hurricane? Polaris Hurricane, is that right, or was it a Tiger Shark Hurricane? Oh my gosh, I can't remember. Holy cow, I can't remember my Polarises and Tiger Sharks. Doesn't matter. Anyhow, he came up with, and it took him years to develop it, but he came up with a self-adjusting pump cone. No joke. And how it works today, and he actually uses, he actually will go up to 155 mil pump for like the Sea-Doo RXT or RXP, like 215s and 255s. It is a Polaris. Thank you, Peter. I appreciate you saying so. I don't know why I had such a brain fart over it. But his adjustable pump cone is actually really clever in that it's a billet base. Let's I'll draw all over my nice design here. I should use black. Let me use black. All right. So he uses a billet base that comes out to about here. All right. Mounts on. And then he's got a hard white Delrin plastic cone. It's kind of snub. It's a snub nose cone. All right. Looks like that. But what it does is that it's got a long bolt, a long shouldered bolt that runs through it, and on it is a spring. And what happens is that at low velocity, at low speed, that spring pulls in on that Delrin cone, and so it's really stubby. All right. And when it's stubby, you have all that volume. You got tons and tons of volume. But when you get on the throttle and you pull hard, the actual velocity of moving water will pull on that Delrin cone and extend out to its furthest point. Now he in a kit typically will give you 3. He'll give you a short, medium, and long. And he wants you to try all 3 of them, and you're gonna adjust accordingly. But his Adjust a Thrust kit, it's called Adjust a Thrust. The Adjust a Thrust kit will actually function mechanically without any controls, without you having to flip a switch or do anything funky. It will work based on the velocity of passing water. Okay, this kit has been surprisingly successfa, especially with the last few years of like the XP Sea-Doos, and there's a handful of guys out there with GP 12 and 1300 Yamahas, and they had very good success with the Adjust a Thrust. Now here's where it gets really funny, and I have had this experience with people firsthand, so I'm speaking this is the horse's mouth. I've had people who are very creative, very bright people who've invented something and said, well, I don't want to manufacture it, but I'd sell it to Sea-Doo. Well, that same sort of thing happened with the guys at Wet Wolf, is that he was getting some traction on his Adjust a Thrust system. And Sea-Doo, a representative from Sea-Doo, called and said, hey, do you make a part for the 155 pump? And he goes, no, but I probably can. And he goes, send me a cone and I'll machine one. And I said, oh, great. Sent him a pump. They sent him a factory plastic pump cone. And off of that, he did his CAD design, and then he manufactured one and sold it. It was a custom piece. It was expensive. And off it went. And that was the end of it. And then towards the end of the year, a buddy of his hit him up and he goes, hey, did you see what Sea-Doo just patented? He's like, what are you talking about? And I actually have the picture of the patent. I wish I could, I wish I could share a picture on this. There's just no way to share a picture. But well, I'll tell you what I can do. Here, let's see if I can do it this way. And I'll put it on my laptop. It's super grainy. But Sea-Doo designed their own version of the adjust-a-thrust cone and patented it and ripped them off. And that's not the first time I've heard that. Theirs is a little bit, I like their version a little bit better because it retains the nose cone. It retains the sharp edge of the nose. All right. The reason why the adjust-a-thrust has a stub end is because that is where you access with a long Allen. You access the Allen screw to pull it out. And I thought, oh, I'm like, all I have to do is you have to inside of the Delrin just machine threads, and then you just CNC machine either a billet or a Delrin plastic cone that just threads in, and you should be set. You can put a little set screw in there too. It'd be easy. But the adjustable pump cone actually functions. All right. It's a functioning piece. And why Sea-Doo didn't use it, didn't employ it, is a curiosity to me, because the guys at Wet Wolf did not sue, according to what I've been told. So that being said, there's a lot of potential there. So then we get to the end of the Venturi. Now there's a CNC shop out of Japan, and it's the guy's name. Actually, I wrote it down so I could try to pronounce it. It's Yusuke Hirosaka. Right here. Yusuke Hirosaka has been CNCing custom Venturis and custom steering nozzles for the new SXR 1500. All right. They're beautiful. Oh my gosh, they're artwork. Absolute artwork. Beautiful pieces. But the neat thing about them is that the kits come with a series of nozzle. They're threaded nozzle ends, and you can customize the outlet for the steering nozzle and the Venturi. All right, you're supposed to match them. You're supposed to have the same size each time. Now, that's a manual process, and that's going into tuning your pump and going in there and saying, well, you know what, I want more thrust, and so I'm going to get a tighter, outlet, and so you put in the number 1 tighter outlet versus the number 2 or number 3, and you can customize accordingly. But the one thing that I was introduced to, and this is back at the World Finals in 2008, was a gentleman came up to me, and he said, hey, Kevin, you got a minute? And I said, sure, what do you got? And he says, I've been working on this for 10 years, and I think I got it. And I said, okay, well, what do you got? And what he had done is that he had custom built, and it was a big clunk. I mean, it was a hoss of a Venturi. But what was interesting in the Venturi is that the Venturi had tear-shaped blades in it. And what the Venturi would do is, depending on thrust, would index like iris. So at low thrust, it was very wide open. And so that was moving as much volume as possible. But as velocity passed by the sides of the inside of the Venturi, it would close the iris and get tighter and increase the thrust. He goes, if I was to make it if you were to come to me with a blank check and said, make me one, he said, it would literally cost you like $3,000. And this is back in 2009 or 2008. And I was like, okay. And he says, yeah, it's really hard to replicate. And he goes, and there's a lot of moving parts. But interestingly enough, what was happening here was that he was fully understanding that you could have a 200 horsepower engine that produces thrust like a 350 horsepower engine. You see what I'm saying? You can work smarter, not harder, but you do that through manipulating your volume and your velocity. Does that make sense? All right. Same thing goes the steering nozzle again. The steering nozzle, like, if it's too, a lot of times you'll see that the steering nozzle is a larger diameter than the Venturi nozzle. That's okay. You're not losing a lot of velocity, but if it's equal, it should be okay. Bigger is a little better. Smaller than the Venturi becomes restrictive. You actually get backflow. All right, then you get turbulence coming in and out of here. Let me be a little bit better. Well, no, don't want to use green. Let's use red. Yeah, if this outlet, I'm gonna knock this over. If this outlet is too small, you're gonna get thrust that comes back because it can't get out fast enough. So that's why you want a slightly larger outlet, or equal to. So that's a little bit of our understanding volume and velocity when it comes to pumps, and the technology that is available, that has been patented, that people are working on, and that Kawasaki, Yamaha, and Sea-Doo have all toyed with. I showed you the patent for the Sea-Doo. I've seen stuff from Kawasaki, and Yamaha is so tight-lipped because all that development is over in Japan, and I don't get a lot of communication from Japan. All right, so the last topic we're going to touch on, and it's going to be brief, because there's a lot of people who are going to argue and scream and yell and throw temper tantrums over this, is your drag versus traction when it comes to hull designs. And it's not so much hull designs, because I've talked about hull designs and what hull designs do, and I've done other videos in understanding, quite frankly, understanding what hulls work better and what conditions. What I want to focus on in this is actual surface. All right, your hull surface. Right now, in a lot of groups, there's a lot of folks arguing on, do I need to coat my hull? And it's predominantly with the guys who are the Nano Excel guys. That's why I put out the little video saying, listen, the best results that have been recorded thus far have been just to clear coat, put an additional 1 or 2 coats of clear coat with a flex additive in, and spray it onto the hull of your Yamaha. There's so many. I mean, there's so many different kinds of coatings. There's so many different kinds of textured coatings and hydrophobic coatings. There's so many different kinds of hull coatings that I can't sit there, and I honestly can't tell you this coating for that ski will render this result. I simply can't do it. It's so big. It's so much. But I will just break down some of the science of it and what you're looking for. So an untreated hull, all right, an untreated hull is what you get from the factory, whether it's a Kawasaki, SMC, if it's a CM Tech Sea-Doo, if it's a Nano Excel 1 or 2 Yamaha, because they're all painted, or a plastic Polytech Sea-Doo. There's some different behaviors happening with water on those surfaces, okay? I did a video on why the new GTR 230 is slower than the previous, slower than the 2019. And the reason being is the Polytech hull, all right? The hull shape is great. The hull shape is great. The hull material is porous, all right? It's textured, it's rough. And that's what happens down here. And I don't know if you guys can see it very well, but that's kind of a bumpy line. It's not a smooth line. It's a bumpy. Maybe I should hold it up a little closer. All right, I'll do this. All right. So good. You can. Dang it. All right. So we got a little bit of a bumpy line going on here. And what happens when you have a textured surface, and that could be a heavily scratched surface. That could be someone who thought that they should rhino line, truck bed liner. They should, line X their hull. That textured surface, what you're doing is that you're getting an agitated bubble layer. All right. You're getting right here turbulent water. When you say cavitation, it's turbulent water. And you're getting a surface of turbulence right here. Unfortunately, passing water does not move as predictably and smoothly, meaning fast, past a turbulent surface. Okay? Now, there's guys out there who are like, I rhino lined my ski and I didn't see any loss. I go, no, you probably wouldn't. But the big thing for me and the big thing for hull designers is that this kills your surface tension. All right? Surface tension is traction. If that ski has no surface tension, you have no traction. All right? You could put bitchin' Riva sponsons on it and a bitchin' intake grate and have it fully set up, but if it's rhino lined, your surface tension is half of what it could be. All right? Meaning your traction, you're loose. You're unpredictable. All right? So a textured surface is very, very difficult. It's very difficult for me to pass off onto. Now, there's guys who are using textured surfaces because they are running their boats aground. Now, I'm talking boats, not just jets, not jet skis, actual boats, fishing boats, bass boats. They're encountering obstacles. And so they're using rhino lining as a protective coating. Interestingly enough, it's not the rhino lining, it's not the texture that they really want. What they want are the actual rubberized, heavy, protective. Oftentimes there's Kevlar in that blend. And that's the protection they want. If there was a smooth Line X or a smooth rhino liner, they'd prefer to use it. All right. Untreated, going back to my original point, see how that line, this green line is to represent your water flow. All right. And that textured line is showing that it's broken up, that it's passing quickly, but it's catching. There's surface tension. Okay. So you have a very nice, grip. You have really good, predictable grip. Hydrophobic coatings. Now, this is why a lot of guys come to me and they go, "Hey, should I ceramic coat my hull?" And my answer is almost always the same as, I'm like, yeah, for protection, that'd be great. If you're gonna hit a sandbar, if you're gonna pull your ski up on the beach, that sort of thing. I said, but the jury's still out on whether you pick up any speed and whether you lose any surface tension. And the reason being is that a really good quality ceramic coating is hydrophobic. It literally repels water. Okay. And the way it does that is that ceramics have a very close knit molecular bond. And that bond basically makes an impenetrable surface. Okay, so water can't cling on and impregnate or cling on and bite on to the surface. It's too smooth. So the water just wicks right off. Okay. That's interesting because you're like, oh, well, that'd be great, man. That would really speed me up, and that'd make me faster. Oh boy, that'd be trick. The problem is that you're also sacrificing your traction. Or are you? Now, hydrophobic coatings on a really good hull design will eliminate drag while the hull produces traction. And a really good hull design that has the proper pivot point, proper strakes, proper chines for the application you could have effectively a very good, very effective, very predictable hull that is also hydrophobic. I only know of 2 guys that I trust who are messing with hydrophobic ceramic coatings. Right now, they've been 100% on the GPR. They've just been messing with the GPR with different coatings, and they've had some measurable success when it comes to ceramic coatings. But what I mean by success is that they're picking up top end speed. They have not, according to the results, and I'm not at liberty to talk about it just yet until they come out with a product, because they are developing a product. They swear they haven't lost traction around corners, around the buoys. So again, a hydrophobic ceramic coating or a hydrophobic chemical coating, doesn't have to be ceramic, does have potential. This is kind of, I don't want to dog on anyone, but I really want to caution against that. Because you're basically replicating a Polytech hull, a Spark or a GTI or a GTR. And you're getting that porosity, you're getting that uneven surface. And so the water is having a really hard time not being agitated as it goes over. And that agitation is dragging you down. It is dragging your ski down. So that is really kind of the breakdown. And manufacturers are very well aware of these things. Different gel coats, different paint materials have been explored. Sea-Doo's acrylic finish is unlike other acrylics for a reason, and that is also to provide that slippery surface. So there's a lot that goes on to these manufacturers messing with these things, and there is a reason, and it's not just cost, that they chose to go with a Polytech hull for the GTR, and that was to purposely slow it down. There was intent. And I know people are like, why on earth do they want to slow it down? That's the stupidest thing ever. That's so dumb. You're not thinking like a multi-million-dollar company or multi-billion-dollar company. All right, they're looking at liability. And so that is a lot of what I had prepared. This is a lot of the science that's going into non-engine performance. But I wanted to share a lot of the stuff that people have been working on. I think it's really exciting. I love this kind of stuff. This stuff, it just totally gets me all jazzed. I think it would be neat to see. Well, I'll say it this way. There's people who are lobbying against Watercraft being so fast and having more power. People have asked, like, are we going to see 315 horsepower out of Sea-Doo? Are we going to see 330 or 350 out of the OEs? Right now in the political climate, I would say no. But that doesn't mean that they can't make it more efficient. That doesn't mean that they can't get you equal, if not more power by working smarter, not harder. All right. Not just boost and compression and fuel, but efficiency. All right. Volume and velocity. And I think that's where it's at. Drag, manufacturers are going to lean more towards maximum traction and a better, more efficient pump than anything else. Again, this goes back to Yamaha making inroads towards a 160 millimeter pump. All right. And previous to this year, when they had the 155 millimeter transom plate, but the Stator, the Stator was a 160, and everything else, everything else is a 160, but the transom. Now the transom is 160 all the way through. Okay, well, we didn't get any super chats today, which is kind of a bummer. I'm kind of bummed that we didn't get any super chats. So I guess I'm just going to go through everyone's questions, and we'll see what's in the question section. All right. Wake up, Mr. Mouse. Come on. All right. Here we go. Scroll all the way back up. All right. Good day from Melbourne. Listening while I work. Great content as always. Kevin, is there anything you would do to the Fish Pro? As far as what? Like what changes I'd like to see for the Fish Pro for next year? Footwell drains. 100% footwell drains. Holy cow, footwell drains. Those footwells fill up with 5 gallons of water each side. It's ridiculous. Oh, we did get a super chat. Holy cow. All right. Here's $5. Have fun. Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate that. All right. Let's see here. Hi, Anthony. I love how you do a video. All right. Yes, is that a variable nozzle on the whiteboard? Okay. Tony writes, I'm looking to buy a used 2020 FX SVHO Limited with 95 hours on it. Should I be concerned with that many hours? That's a lot of hours for a 2020. But if the ski is in stock, if the ski is not modified and you've been able to look it over and you're looking at wear and it's the traditional wear places, that just means the guy's a long hauler. The guy just puts in his time. He goes with groups and he just rides a lot. That is a lot of miles in 1 year, or a lot of hours. I keep saying miles. That's a lot of hours on 1 year in a single year. But yeah, I will tell you, if the guy's just a cruiser and he belongs to a club and he just rides, then great. But again, I would look it over very closely and see where the wear marks are. You know, if it's just in the seat and grips and foot, you know, on the HydroTurf, then the guy just sat on the ski and rode the tar out of it. If it's modified, I'd stay away from it. All right. Anthony Santana writes, Tony, look very closely at the condition of that FX ski. Oh, he's responding to Tony's question. Will tell you everything about itself, like the bottom hull inside of the engine bay, and look inside of the jump pump. Very good points, Anthony. Yes, you're exactly right. Will Yamaha ever get a sport eco mode like you do? Unlikely. Very unlikely. The Yamaha is trying really hard to separate themselves from Sea-Doo. They don't want to be just the guys following every step that Sea-Doo takes. The brake system, they labored very hard to make their brake system stand apart from Sea-Doo's. And that is, quite frankly, you know, the ride system versus IBR. And they tried really hard just to distinguish themselves. But everyone's like, oh, Yamaha, look at Yamaha. They're just ripping off Sea-Doo. It's like, well, dude, everyone wants brakes. We have to do the right thing. So I highly doubt you're going to see a sport or eco mode, just as it is. Plus, I'll tell you what, Yamaha's regular sporty mode is more economical than Sea-Doo's eco mode. Yamaha has class leader in fuel mileage. Landshark, yes, please hit the like button. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like what we're doing, please like this video. And if you got more time, go back through other videos and hit the like buttons for all those. like all the videos. All right. Let's see. Dylan writes, do you think the new built-in speakers on Yamaha GP Series 21 are good compared to the Sea-Doo ones? They're good. They're not great. I talked a little bit about the sound systems. The biggest problem, believe it or not, is position. Sea-Doo speakers are simply positioned better. The Yamaha ones are a little bit lower in the tray, and they're angled up. So, I mean, they're not angled up, but they're more up than Sea-Doos are. And if I'm not mistaken, they're just as powerful, but the Sea-Doos seem to have a better clarity. And I mean, those new speakers are the speakers that are on the GPs and the VXs right now, they're gonna be on the FXs next year, and pretty much identical way, and they're good. And I really like where the controls are way more than the Sea-Doo. I hate reaching down and let me get some water. Sorry. I really don't like having to reach down onto the sound system on the Sea-Doo. Yamaha is nice because it's right underneath the handlebars. So, yeah, it's kind of splitting hairs, but for sound clarity, I kind of like Sea-Doo a little bit better. All right. John West writes, I met a guy on the lake with an FX Cruiser. He put a thin layer of rhino lining just below the bow and back about halfway on the bottom of the hull. He said he does it to all his skis, never had an issue. I've never heard of a thin layer of rhino lining. That's pretty thick. And again, talking about that. The problem is drag. You're producing drag. So that's the big issue is drag. And I got into it in one of the Facebook groups. One guy was ardent. He would not let it go. And he goes, well, yeah, but guys used to take their skis and drag them on the launch ramp to texturize the skis. I go, yeah, that was back in 1989 when you were riding a JS 440 or a JS 550 that made about 66 horsepower. And the reason why Bill Chapin and Christie and Jeff Jacobs and Rob Fischetti were all doing that. Chris Fischetti, Rob Flores and Chris Fischetti. Sorry, I married those two guys. Sorry. The reason why they were doing that was they were doing the bow, and that was predominantly to produce drag. So they could get drop the nose into the corner and hook around a buoy. All right. They were purposely chewing up those hulls just so that they could get extra traction, extra drag in those corners. So that was the idea. All right. They weren't texturizing the inside of the strakes. They weren't doing that. They were just getting it scuffed on the flat. Anyone who's been on a 550, a 650, I mean, any of those old stand-ups, they had a very flat, broad keel, and it'd be slippery, and they'd slide and they'd shift. And a lot of racers were using were using that technique to texturize the hulls just so they'd have drag. Horsepower is easy, but they needed the drag and that so that they could bite, and that was the whole purpose behind that. Okay. Tony Granich writes, still has warranty, but I would. Oh, Tony's continuing from the FX. Still has warranty, but I would do a stage 1 800 RPM Riva tune at some point, but don't want to blow the warranty right away, but would like a dependable ski that would run 75. Well, wait till the warranty runs out and then reflash the ECU with the stock. The stock tune 8000, the stock 8000 tune, will get you 75, and a ride plate first. Ride plate ECU tune get you 75, 76. In fact, probably get you closer to 77 in ideal conditions. So yeah, that's a good goal. You could definitely do that, but if you want to keep your warranty, don't touch your ECU. Do your ride plate. You'll pick up about 2 miles an hour with the ride plate. And then a lot of guys are concerned with the ride plate and there's people talking about porpoising with the ride plate, and oftentimes it's because they're literally bouncing off the rev limiter, and the revolutions of the impeller are surging. They're literally slowing down and surging and speeding back up in microseconds. So the ski would actually do this because they're bouncing off the rev limiter. We got another super chat. Tony, thank you, Tony. I'm answering your question right now. So yeah, it's just it's oh boy. I am skipping all over the place. All right. But yeah, if you want to keep your warranty in place, don't touch your ECU until it runs out. Okay. Let's see here. I totally lost my place, guys. All right. Yes, he said John West writes again. Yes, he said he has a Fish Pro and he did the entire bottom because he's in shallow water so much. Well, a Fish Pro's not fast. You're doing 50, 53, 54, maybe. And if you're in shallows and you're running up on rocks or dirt and sand, go ahead and do that if you want. But again, it's for protection. It's not going to provide you any performance. All right. Yeah, and everyone's having a conversation without me here. It sounds like he doesn't care about speed, just longevity of the hull. Okay. I thought torque steer was a ricer problem. Well, it happens to the best of us. All right. Let's see. They can always go with variable geometry impeller that has thrust both ways. Oh, yeah. In fact, Anthony, that's something else that a lot of people have been messing with are the double impellers, the small one that feeds into a larger one. So you have a longer corkscrew, a longer trailing surface. And that is that's been toyed with by the manufacturers for a few years now. In fact, a lot of drag racers were messing with it. I know Jerry he jumped on it when the first thrust innovations and Crash Industries, a lot of the freestyle guys were messing with double impellers. Okay. Good gravy must be a Tennessee thing. No, I'm not trying to swear so that YouTube gets in trouble and pings me. If I don't swear, I can monetize my videos. Could they adapt something like a centrifugal lockup clutch on a motorcycle to adjust pitch? Yes. That is the technology they're looking at for adjustable nozzles and for pitch, impeller pitch, is a lot like CVT transmissions. And so it'll be interesting to see where that goes. All right. Yeah. Peter jumped the gun, adjust the thrust cone over 20 years ago. Evan writes, if I understand correctly, the bigger diameter of the nozzle, the more force you get. The smaller the diameter, the more speed you get. Thus, variable nozzle acts like a transmission. I would actually compare it more to a locking differential, and that the transmission, if you were to correlate a transmission with a personal watercraft, I would. It still has to manipulate the output drive. It still has to manipulate the RPMs from the out drive. In this application regarding thrust and adjustable thrust, velocity versus volume, I would equate it to a sure grip or a positive traction rear end, wherein as you're cruising, you're only using one wheel. But if you really romp on it, the thrust engages those clutches, and those clutches index, and suddenly now you've got positive traction and you're spinning your tire. You're really biting down a lot harder. So that's how I kind of correlate the two. if that makes sense. All right. I think the issue is simply cost. Scott water jets and the Aussie's jet sprint boats handle hundreds of horsepower, but they're like $20,000 just for the pump. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's all cost prohibitive, guys. If this stuff was cheap, it'd be on skis. It's all cost prohibitive. All right. John West writes, on the Kawasaki, because I thought it was because of the water box on one side filling up at low speed. Yes. But then you figure, all right, well, what's on the other side is that giant intercooler. And that's got water going through it. And that water box does not fill up with water. It's not a water balloon. So I was of the mindset that, yes, it was because of the water box for a long time. And then I started talking in preparation for this video and doing more research. A lot of guys are like, dude, it's low-end torque. It's torque steer. It's because the stupid thing is the thrust coming out of it is just swirling out, and the stator's not doing a good enough job. I'm like, you think? And they're like, look at the water coming out of it. I couldn't. I don't have one. But they felt very strongly about it, and they're smarter than I am. So I tend to think that, especially, I go back, the most badass, fully custom Ultra I ever saw was just it was the National Tour in 2009. This is forever ago. It's 12 years ago, for goodness sakes. But wow, my brain is fried. Dennis Farthing, good Lord. Dustin Farthing was racing for Kawasaki. And he got involved with Bob Endress, who I've known for years, at Paxton Superchargers. And Bob and he and Michelle at Scat Track, well, it wasn't Michelle, but it was the team at Scat Track, and a few other, and of course, Phil Farthing, got together and they built a fleet. I say fleet, there's two of them, of the most badass Ultras I'd ever seen for closed course racing. And Tim Bushman Racing provided the steering and handling components. And they were making 400 and a quarter out of that 260 Ultra. But I saw what the pump looked like. I saw the whole pump being taken out. And he had something like an 18 vein billet pump that Scat Track had made for him. I keep saying pump. It was the Stator. It was a billet Stator. And that thing was artwork. It was artwork. It was so nice. And that was to correct everything they had done with the I said prop. I'm not supposed to say prop, with the impeller. Because the impeller was so aggressive, the Stator had to be equally aggressive in the opposite direction to counter the directional hydrodynamics. And that was kind of my first introduction to that kind of technology, was back in 2009, and really understanding what the Stator was doing. And boy, I'll tell you, what Farthing was able to do with that stinking Ultra in 2009, dude. But I'll tell you what, he grenaded the crap out of so many engines. He blew the snot out of so many engines. But it didn't. He was throwing money at it. He had the cash. But boy, he was untouchable. And I mean, and this is the year that an 80 mile an hour FZR and FZS was not out of the question. Farthing was doing damn near that, if not more. But he was doing it with his hair on fire. I mean, he was going fast. So, and that's pushing a lot of jet ski through the water. All right. Adjust the thrust is, yes, Peter Johnson is the name of the Wet Wolf one. I have one here for a 140 Scat. Oh, cool. Peter. Yeah. Okay, here he is. He's telling more information about it. Awesome. So Peter continues, the sweet spot for the steering nozzle is about 4 mils bigger than the Venturi. Any bigger and you lose steering feel. Any smaller and you lose speed. Very good. Thank you. When the SXR 800 came out, most of the fast racers used to sand the hulls with a pretty coarse grit. Again, going back to it. Very good. Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that input. I like that. Would a new GTR X 230 be Polytech or CM Tech? Aaron, very good question. That, I don't know. I wager to say Polytech, only because the previous GTR X 230 rode on the same hull as the GTR 230. It just had the top deck of the RXPX. But if Sea-Doo was so inclined to make a lower horsepower RXPX and call it an RXP 230, you would have a CM Tech hull. And that is not out of the question. The idea of an RXPX 300 and then an RXP 230 has been discussed. And there are people who are like, I want the RXPX, but I don't need 300 horse and I want better fuel mileage. Maybe the 230 is up my alley. Unfortunately, then if they were to come out with an RXP 230, guaranteed within months, we'll have people go, how can I get my RXP 230 to make more horsepower than the RXPX 300? And then you're like, dude, you bought the wrong ski. All right. So Lawrence writes, so I have a question. When you say brakes, it's okay to just throw it in reverse. For IBR and ride, you grab the brakes. Okay. Now ride, you can have your right hand on top of your head like this and grab the reverse throttle and come to a complete stop and be safe. Sea-Doo would prefer that you had both hands and you're giving it throttle and you're engaging the reverse and you'll come to a complete stop in less than 100 feet. I believe Sea-Doo is something like 90, 95 feet from full tilt, full speed, full chop, grab the reverse. And believe it or not, what's actually kind of neat is that the ECU will actually start to pulse the throttle, so it will feel like ABS brakes. You'll feel like a it'll actually pulse the throttle. It's actually kind of cool. So yeah, it's brakes. If you have IBR or ride, you have brakes. All right. Tony continues. Yes, the FX SVHO is still stock, just a young owner, 26-ish years old. I'll tell you what, I would never buy anything from a 26-year-old me. I know who I was when I was 26, and I would never have bought anything off of me at 26. Sean writes, I have a 2019 GTR 230. Does anyone besides Riva Racing make a catch can for my ski? Well, it's a supercharged Sea-Doo, and quite frankly, I mean, JP Racing's would work. You can get a universal catch can oil separator off of Amazon, for goodness sakes, if you want to get creative. The only problem that I have with the JP Racing and Riva Racing catch cans is that they kill the circuit. They deadhead the circuit. So what do I mean by the circuit? What I mean is the hose that runs from the engine block to the air intake. So there's a single hose that runs from the engine block with hot atmosphere, crankcase atmosphere pressure into the air intake. And the velocity of passing air in the air intake is pulling that high crankcase pressure out of the crankcase, okay? But you're also getting all the oil and this unspent gas and the carbon and all the other crap that's in there that shouldn't be in there. So what Riva and JP does is that they take that hose that's running from the crankcase and they plug this one off, and it just goes to a catch can with a breather. Well, the problem is that when you go to a catch can and a breather, you don't have the vacuum from the air intake drawing it out. You just have the crankcase pressure. So you're not properly evacuating the crankcase. So what would be ideal, and what I've been working on, is an oil separator that has no breather. There's no breather, but it continues the circuit. So from the crankcase, goes into the oil separator, and it feeds from the bottom, and it pulls from the top so that the oil can't go uphill. All right, there's enough blockage there. And that only the hot atmospheric air is being pulled out through the air intake. All right. And also in completing that circuit, the guys are saying you need to have that oil to lubricate the throttle body and the supercharger and all that other stuff, which you don't. You will still be getting a little bit of oil, but you're not getting all of that. So completing that circuit and continuing the draw is that you have negative, draw is negative atmosphere, and you have positive atmosphere in the crankcase, which is pressure. The pressure is pushing slowly, but the negative is pulling it out. So a push and pull, and it's pulling that crankcase atmosphere out. And that's the biggest thing is crankcase atmosphere is positive crankcase ventilation. That's what you want. Okay. Due to warranty, thank you for your input. I enjoy the show, learning a lot. Well, I'm happy to help, Tony. Oh, BNN came in. My Pro Series sponsons finally came in last week. What a huge difference those things make. Well worth the money and 5-month wait. Thanks for the advice. BNN, it is absolutely my pleasure. Thank you. A lot of people will sit there and go, oh, well, I don't want to wait, because unfortunately everyone's waiting for parts. I'm waiting for parts. I still don't have my back seat for my RXPX, and I've been waiting for a back seat for that thing. And it's just because there's so much demand and there's not enough supply. But I'm very glad that BNN was able to get the Pro Series sponsors off of Riva. I'm very glad that he's already put them on and he's already tested them out, and that he's proven that I am not full of crap and that I actually have a general idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm happy to hear that. Great. All right, let's see here. Okay, Tim Reed writes, would you recommend Riva sponsons for a GTX 230 for better tracking while touring in choppier water in the Gulf of Mexico? Certainly. Oh, certainly. If you can buy them and you don't mind waiting a little bit, definitely get them. Anything will help the ST3 hull. The ST3 hull, in my honest opinion, is a problematic hull. It just needs a lot of help. The intake rate and the Pro Series sponsons will radically change how your ST3 hull operates. I promise you that. Okay. Ted writes, Ted L. About to buy my first PWC. Ted L writes, about to buy my first PWC, a 2021 Sea-Doo GTR 230. Should be arriving within the next 2 weeks. Going to use it to tow water skiers sometimes. Wonder if a Riva grate should do me any good. Basically, a Riva grate would get you. It's like putting stickier tires on your hot rod. All right, on your muscle car. All right, you're going to have better traction. You're going to have better hookup and better traction. And your acceleration, you're going to feel it, and in rougher water, you're going to feel that your pump is always engaged. So that would help you out. And in towing skis, you're going to have that really good low-end acceleration, that really low-end grunt that's going to be able to pull you up the plane and pop your water skiers out of the water. So that'll be a good thing. Yeah, by all means, that's a really good option to go with. So good idea, Ted. Well, there's no ride. Hooligan writes, Ted, you might want to focus on the ride plate first. Watercraft Journal did a video on why it helped newer generation FXs so much It helped the GTR too. There's no ride plate for the GTR. It's a seated. It's a sealed ride plate. That's your cooling system. So leave that alone. All right. Keith writes, IDF issue is a, quote, service bulletin, quote, not a recall, I believe. If I mention this to my dealer waiting on a 21 GTX Limited, will they know what I'm talking about? Where can I find this posted as a reference? It's pretty much all over Facebook. It's pretty much all over the forums. It is not a recall. They won't call it a recall. They'll wince in horror like a vampire to sunlight if you say recall. They'll just run away screaming. Recall is a dirty word. But yes, they are they're servicing all those units. Now, if you haven't taken possession of your GTX Limited, don't worry about it. It'll be fixed by the time it shows up. All right. It's been addressed. The service bulletin really went out to owners who had already taken possession of their new units with IDF. Everything coming in off the trucks will be oil pressure tested to make sure that they have the right oil pressure, which means that the oil journals that are in the PTO cover are passing, that there's good oil pressure through there, which will feed the IDF. So they're kind of checking everything before it gets out of the box. So you should be really comfortable. I want you to be comfortable in knowing that the unit, once it arrives, is not going to help, you can take comfort in knowing that the unit, once it shows up, will be checked for you. Okay, Mike C writes, they make an adjust a thrust for the spark. Not helping my wallet, you evil ginger. Darn it, that was funny. If they do make one for the spark, that's awesome. I didn't know that. And I want you to go get one, Mike. I want you to spend the money, and then I want you to tell me about it because I'm interested to see what your response is. I'm actually very interested in it. Okay. Steve B writes a question that I probably can't answer. Steve writes, what frequency do 2019 Yamaha remotes use? When I ride my VX Limited near the TV radio antennas west of Philadelphia, I can't lock or unlock my ski or change modes. I drive about a mile away and it works fine. Wow! I don't know what the frequency is. Boy, do I hate that stupid remote thing. Ugh. I know the spirit. I understand the spirit behind it. And I know people who swear by it, who love them. But it's not my thing. That was not my cup of tea. All right. Anthony writes, Anthony is, okay. You're killing me, bro. All right. So a cousin of mine who has never owned a machine or has a license got an Ultra 310. Will my 21 RXPX be faster off the gate? I know top speed is locked to 68 miles per hour either way on both machines. Anthony, you'll hit 71 miles an hour for a fraction of a second. He won't. All right. He's going to lay over around 73 to 70. No, it's higher than that. But he's going to run out of oomph around 7,500. I'm curious. Here's the problem. Anthony, let's war game this shootout. Okay. Ultra. Wet weight versus wet weight versus wet weight. The difference between that ski and your ski is about 88 or 89 pounds. Someone did the math on a post, and I tried to remember that number. All right. So let's just round up to 90 pounds. Then he's got an extra 3 gallons of gas. All right. Well, that's 18 pounds right there. Then you have launch control. He does not. Then that Ultras pull out of the hole like you would not believe. They pull like a... like a scalded dog. Those things just, and the whine will freak you out too. Just, and they just go screaming out of the hole. All right. If your cousin gets all the way back behind the back seat, gets all of his weight off the seat, all the way on the back, and he's trimmed the nose down, and he knows how to trim it up while coming to plane, and you don't have launch control engaged, and you're sitting on the ski, he'll eat your lunch. But if both you guys are postured right, if you have equal gas, I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know. And I want to know. And I've talked to a couple different guys. The problem is that 2021 has been an SOB when it comes to doing any sort of really high concept shootouts. And we can't get our hands on units. Because I want to do a 0 to 60 acceleration test between a bone stock RX PX 300, a bone stock GP 1800R, and an Ultra 310R. And I know the weight difference between all those skis, and people are going to scream and yell saying that the Ultra is too big, but there isn't anything comparable for the PX and the GP. So what are you going to do? Anyhow, I'm really curious. I don't have an answer for you. I kind of think you'll edge them on the big end, but the first 30 feet, I don't know. The first 30 feet, I don't know. That's the one thing I'm curious about. All right. We're already an hour and a half into this. All right. Jason writes, contacted Sea-Doo Friday. They are 1 month behind on deliveries to Ontario and Montreal, Canada. Waiting on parts, apparently. Kevin, you said they were no issues last time you spoke with Sea-Doo. What I said was that they were not changing production run, and they were going to fulfill all their promised production. I also said that there is a major shipping problem in the United States. There is not enough truckers to move all the product because for whatever reason, we're paying people not to work. We're paying people to sit on their ass and watch Netflix. So now we don't have people working at meat processing plants, meaning there's going to be a shortage on bacon. And God knows I want to murder someone if I can't buy bacon. And we're also not getting a lot of the product that it has been built because there's literally a trucker shortage. I'm not joking. There's a lot of problems going on, and I don't want to get too political, but it ain't great. So I'm sorry, Jason. Don't get mad at me. It is what it is, bro. All right. Oliver, for the shoot. Okay, Oliver writes, for the IDF, we'll get info this week. I have a meeting with BRP. They are working on it with my ski for the issue. Last time I was talking with them, they were testing the new parts. Okay, good. Well, hopefully the problem should be solved. Okay. Okay. Well, Jason's got an axe to grind, so you can just leave. Sorry. It would be an RX-PX 230. It'd be an RX-P 230. The X is reserved for the 300s. All right. What stator do you recommend for the FX SVHO? Stock. Are you changing how radical are you going to go with your impeller? Unless you're going to radically change your impeller, you don't need to change your stator. So you're good. All right. I have some RX-PX back seats in stock at work. Shall I send you one? Anthony, email me at kevin.shaw@shawgroupmedia.com immediately because I'm going to get you involved with Sea-Doo. I'll get you in the loop with Sea-Doo because I had to order everything through Sea-Doo, and they're seriously dragging their feet on getting me a back seat, and I need one like ASAP. I can't film anything on the water without a back seat because I have a person filming me. So yeah, please email me at kevin.shaw@shawgroupmedia.com. All right. Let's see here. For my Kimmy writes, for my 2020 SVHO FX Cruiser that has a Stage 1 Plus Riva kit, should I install the Pro Series cooling engine upgrade kit? That really I mean, you can, but the nice thing is about the SVHO is that the SVHO engine does not suffer from really bad internal operating temperatures. It actually stays pretty well regulated. The intercooler is pretty efficient, and those engines are not really seeing really high. They're just not seeing really high internal operating temperatures. So you can save the money if you want, Kimmy. That's fine. I don't want to cost Riva a sale, but you kind of don't need it. But then again, I will back off by saying it depends on where you are. If you're in a pretty moderate temperature area, you're fine. If you're, I would say like Parker, Arizona. I mean, if you're on the Colorado River, it gets to 110, 115 degrees there. So you might be broiling your engine out there. But at Florida, you're fine. It just depends on where you are. All right. Matthew writes, do you think just leaving my catch can bracket on when servicing, do you think I'll have a warranty issue? I don't think you'll have a warranty issue if you left the stinking thing on. But if you left the bracket on, they'd notice it. A smart, I don't know the mechanic. Your mechanic might be a moron at your dealer. He's just like, how do I change the oil? And if that's the case, then I don't really want the guy touching my ski anyway. But if he's sharp enough to do an oil change right, he's sharp enough to recognize a bracket on the side of your engine that's going to be like, well, what the hell is this? All right. KDH writes, just got home and tuned in. I will watch the replay tomorrow. All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate the super chat. Brett writes, any industry update on general PWC trailer shortages? Heard everything from hubs parts delayed coming from APAC to US-based manufacturing issues. Oh, Simon. Okay. Simon, I don't know. Wow, that's the first I've heard. That makes sense, though. Makes perfect sense. Shoot. I haven't encountered that. I know the prices for trailers have gone through the roof, but I attributed that to aluminum. I attributed that to the aluminum shortage. So, yeah, I had not considered that about the other components. It's a good question. All right. Anthony returns. In regards to the Ultra versus RXP, send me an email. I want to see what I can organize and get some numbers for you. All right. Happy to. All right. Anthony Santana writes, I have a 1318 prop. It's impeller. We don't say prop anymore. Prop is incorrect. It is impeller. And the wedge for my FX. Wedge. Oh, you have a pump wedge? Number one thing you need is a ride plate, bro. That hull is sketchy as all get out. Over like 72 miles an hour. All right, Jason, not mad at you. Didn't know about the truck driver shortage. All right. I'm like, why is Jason busting my chops about it? It's not my fault. Okay, Riva. Okay, Anthony does have the Riva ride plate. Good. and you got the ride plate and a pump wedge? Man, you're going to be doing wheelies. All right. Let's see here. Mike C. writes, would that make me a technical consultant for the Watercraft Journal? I have the Pro Watercraft Racing pump stuffer and Scat Track 1214 impeller. Dude, hey, if you want to write a story for us, heck yeah. I pay contributors. The difference between me and Pro Rider is I pay our contributors. I pay for stories. All right. That's what happens when you have more than 1,200 subscribers. Yeah. Dude, Mike, if you want to write a story, you know how to reach me. My email is kevin.shaw@shawgroupmedia.com. All right. Oh, look at that. Brad comes in. Kevin, I got the Specs goggles in the mail yesterday. Thanks again, man. My pleasure. Just so you know, I ended up spending like $87 in shipping all the stuff, all the gifts that we gave away last week. I blew $90 just to send gifts out. I'm like, for a cheap guy like me, I'm like, I'm not going to renege, but still, it's like, all right. All right. Josh writes, I rode my 2021 RX-PX yesterday for the first time. Broke it in properly until it hit 3 hours and noticed my RPM went to 8,000. Yes, Josh. What happens is that at 2.5 to 3 hours, it starts to let off the restrictions on the throttle. The problem is that it's not going to be sustained. It's going to back you off. All right. At 5,000, it's no longer restrained. At 10,000, it's properly broken in. But yeah, that is, you'll see that. And that's pretty standard. Okay. Anthony. So I got my machine out of break-in yesterday and in 4-foot rollers. I now know what you mean when you say that the nose of the T3R is unpredictable and chop. Dude, you know your stuff. All right. Lawrence writes. Okay. Sorry, I skipped ahead. I'm okay. Ed in Cleveland. I love the name. That's funny. Ed in Cleveland writes, I am getting my garage ready for a Sea-Doo. How long should I wait to buy a PWC at a fair price? Not this year. Whoa. There ain't no such thing as a fair price this year. I'm just saying. And I'll tell you what, all of our friends in Canada who are throwing temper tantrums, they're justified because they can't get anything new. All right. Lawrence writes, getting a Solus impeller, do I need a Stator? Lawrence, I don't know what kind of ski you got. By the way, but please listen to me on this one. There's Solus impellers, and then there's Solus impellers, and they're expensive as all get out. And then there's cheap Solus impellers. Those are Chinese knockoffs. And they're the ones that peel the blades off. All right. Because you'll be like, oh, dude, I found a Solus impeller for $200. What a steal. It's trash. It's garbage. It's made out of pig iron. It's absolute crap. It'll tear itself apart. I'm telling you, it's bad news. If you're going to get one, you got to get the big money. All right. You got to get the expensive ones. And make sure it's pitched accordingly to your tune. Just putting the impeller in your ski and leaving it stock is you're gonna lose top. You're gonna gain top end, but you're gonna be pinning off the rev limiter. Or it just depends. It just depends on what you're planning on doing. Guy. All right. All right. Burger 16 writes, I was told my GP 1800R SVHO wouldn't be in until August. At that point, I shouldn't just wait for a 2022. I live in the Northeast. Every week, guys, every week. And this is going to annoy and piss off a handful of people. I do not believe in putting money down. I know you want to reserve it. Reserving it has not gotten you anything. It's gotten you frustration. Here's what you need to do. Get your money back. Get cash in hand and be ready with a trailer on a weekday or at 10 o'clock at night to drive out and get a ski when it hits the market. If a dealer 4 hours away says, we got 3 of these, you call them and you say, I have cash in hand. I'll be there in 4 hours. They're like, well, we're not open. It's like, then you get a stretch of painter's tape, a masking tape, and you write Kevin Shaw or you write your name across it, and I'll be there in the morning. And you call in sick, I don't care what you do, you get there. You have cash in hand, have a trailer. I'm telling you right now, this whole I put money down thing is bogus. It's crap. All right. And next year, I got bad news, guys. I got bad news, and I'm going to let it out. Every manufacturer is planning on making the same amount, or in most cases, less units next year. I'm going to say it again. All 3 manufacturers are planning on making the same amount of units or less next year. Just putting it out there. You got to make your decisions. All right. Let's see. Almost got thrown 50 feet to the starboard side doing 90 kilometers. Whatever that is in Imperial. I don't know what that means, Anthony. Okay. Josh writes, then hit 72 and plugged in a SCOM. Was as fast as my 16 RX PX with Riva intake and SCOM and works intake rate. Okay. All right. Keith writes, I got the ride pants this week. Didn't know they were zip off bottoms. Throwback. They for and are sweet. Oh yeah. I pulled them up and I said you could zip off the bottoms and then they could be shorts. They're big, thick shorts though. But yeah, I showed that on the video. I remember. Okay. How do you tell the difference on a Solus you just mentioned? I bought a 1318, never installed. Should I put it in the new 21? Josh, how much did you pay for it? That's how you tell. If you got a smoking deal on it, it's BS. I'm going to tell you. Oh, sorry. Anthony just made me look like an idiot. 90 kilometer an hour is 56 miles per hour ish. Miles per hour, that's 55 miles per hour. Yeah. Okay. So you got thrown at 55 or almost got thrown at 55 in rough water. Yikes. Yeah, I haven't been pitched in really, really rough water. I got pitched racing. That's where I always got thrown, was racing. But yeah, okay. My feet were not on the deck half of the ride yesterday. Anthony, here's my biggest suggestion. If you ride rough water regularly and you typically ride aggressively in rough water, get yourself some HydroTurf foot blocks. They're the foam black, one-sided 3M foot blocks or foot wedges, and that'll lock your feet in really, really well. Okay, so Lawrence came back. He rides an FX SVHO. So Lawrence had asked Solus impeller. Yeah, if you're FX SVHO, see, I wouldn't even change the impeller on that ski. Honestly, I put a ride plate on it, sponsons, intake grate, and I'd reflash the ECU to the stock kit or to the stock 8000 tune, and maybe an engine breather just for shits and giggles. And I swore I shouldn't have done that. Sorry. And honestly, I'd run 77 all day long, 78 in that thing. You really would. Integrate sponsons, ride plate, and a reflash. I might do the stock. I might do the stage 1 kit or stage 1 tune. Doesn't give you more RPM, but it's a more aggressive tune. And you're going to avoid your warranty no matter what you do. So yeah, that's kind of my combo. Is if you want to hit 80, do the stock or do the stage 1 tune, ride plate. I don't think you need to change prop, dude. Changing a prop, I keep saying prop. Changing the impeller. Changing anyone who's changing the impeller on a Yamaha knows it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. You have to heat it up cherry red, or you have to have a 8-foot breaker bar. It's just a monster. All right. Josh, I bought it from a reputable dealer for $300-ish on sale, but is there a way to tell on the prop? Even asked if it was the prop with the issue, and I was told no. That's a good question, Josh. Here's the problem: is that side by side, it's really hard to tell the metallurgy because it's a really good knockoff. And the box. Here's the question: does the box have all the proper paperwork in it? It's bagged. It's got either the foam piece or it's got all the little doodads. If it's rattling around loose in a box, I throw it in the trash. I get your money back. But if it's all packed in there nice and there's all the nice little labels and all the little packaging frills, then you might be in better shape. All right. We're getting a lot of questions here. Do you think there will be Burger right? So do you think there will be a big difference between the 2021 GP 1800R SVHO and 22? Zero colors. It'll be colors. It'll be no different. I have cash in hand now. I just can't find one in stock. Yeah, I know. Anthony writes, yeah, you can tell the impeller is fake. Scratch it with a penny like a scratch card, and if it comes off well, it's a knockoff. Oh, that's a good question, Anthony. Thank you. Or that's a good point. Thank you. No, yeah, I'm teasing you, Josh, about calling it an impeller and not a prop. And the only reason why is that Jerry Gaddis read me the Riot Act one day. He's like, dude, you got to stop. And I'm like, because I say prop and I say impeller wheel or supercharger wheel, and he screamed at me for both of them. All right, Anthony writes, I ride North Atlantic Ocean in Canadian waters. Goes from glass to 4-foot rollers in a matter of 15 minutes. I'm sure I abuse that poor thing more than most people. I spend 2 hours cleaning after riding. Well, good. You're using it like you should. I give it to you for that one. KDH writes, I'm trying to decide between an EXR and a Spark as a second ski just for playing around on the lake. I'm 6'2" and 220 pounds, and I have plenty of room on my FZS, which EXR. Yeah, Lawrence is right. Solus, Yamaha, 160 mil, Concord, 1318 impeller, $316. That sounds legit. Your tune. Okay, Lawrence is sending me everything here. Okay, holy cannoli. All right. Riva Map Tuner X, Yamaha 2000. Okay, 1.8 liter bundle. You don't need to give me the part numbers. But what tune? You got the Map Tuner, but what tune? Or you? Oh, I'll circle back. All right, Riva Yamaha Power Filter Kit, Yamaha newer engine breather upgrade kit. Okay. You got the performance ride plate. Good. Stage 1. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what you should do. Call the Map Tuner line, Riva. Tell them everything you got. All right. You say, I got the ride plate. I got the cold air kit. I got the engine breather kit. I've got the Map Tuner, engine cooling upgrade kit. and their 1318 Concord impeller. Tell me what tune I should run, because here's what they do. Okay, just so you understand, the catalog at Riva is obscene. It's huge. I'm over 2 hours. Okay, I think this is my last one, guys. I'm going to answer Lawrence, and I'm going to check out. It's been 2 hours. They'll go through their catalog, and they say, well, listen, the stock one, or the stage one. Josh, you can email me a photograph if you want. You can't post pictures here, but you can email me a photograph. They'll go to their catalog and they say, well, listen, we actually have an adjustment. If you have all these parts, we have an adjusted tune. It won't give you more RPM, but it changes the torque curve. Oh, okay. Well, upload me that one. And they'll write you a new license for the tune. You plug in your map tuner into your computer. You download it into your map tuner, and you go and you tune your Yamaha. All right. And that way you'll be able to really have a super dialed in. It'll be dialed in with your impeller, with everything else. So that's really going to really make the difference. So Lawrence, if you do call Yamaha, tell them everything you got. You can email them if you don't want to get on the phone. And they'll get back to you and say, what do I need to do? This is the tune I got on it right now, but I put all these parts on it. I want to make sure I've got an optimized tune, and they'll send you something. All right? That should do you. Josh, my email address is kevin.shaw@shawgroupmedia.com. Or you can email me at info@watercraftjournal.com. Either way, it all goes to me. Guys, thanks again. I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun. Didn't have a lot. I was going to give out stickers. So anyone who's super chat, $10 or more, you can get some stickers. And because it's like $7 for mailing. But anyhow, or for shipping. But guys, thanks again. Really appreciate it. Please go to the top of this comment section. I gave you guys a bunch of links. One is to subscribe to the newsletter. We send 2 newsletters out a week. One is a recap of the week's articles. The other is a recap of the week's videos. The second link that I put up was for our long hauler auxiliary fuel system kit. That's available for all 4-stroke Kawasaki's, Yamahas, and pre-2012 Sea-Doos. Check it out. It's a quick way to add 65% more fuel to your ski. Automatically feeds into your fuel system. You don't have to stop and refill your gas tank. We've got videos coming out every week, but we got some new episodes on tech stuff coming out, especially for your Sea-Doo guys that you'll really like. And then, of course, the last one, of course, if you want a T-shirt or a hoodie, you can go to our Teespring store. We're selling those. And then we have had some people ask about donations and or sending us stuff. I did put up our P.O. box. We have a P.O. box. It's P.O. Box 666, and I'm not joking. P.O. Box 666, Goodlettsville, Tennessee, area code 37070. And anyone who wants to make donations, you can send a PayPal to my email address at kevin.shaw@shawgroupmedia.com. Guys, thanks again. We're done. This was a lot of fun. But I'm going to sign out. Take care. We'll talk soon.